Supreme Court issues historic 9-0 decision. What it means for 2A rights and the nation. Did the Supreme Court just change the future of the Second Amendment forever? Is this the beginning of a nationwide legal earthquake or the calm before an even bigger storm? Stay with me, because what I'm about to reveal has the potential to reshape gun laws, personal freedom, and the balance of power between the federal government and the people. This is not just another headline, this is a 9-0 unanimous ruling, and that almost never happens in cases involving firearms and constitutional rights. Why did every justice, conservative and liberal, agree? What hidden message is buried inside this decision? And most importantly, what kind of political and legal backlash is already forming behind the scenes? Before we dive into the most controversial angles, including federal overreach, state resistance, and the shocking implications this ruling might have on future bans, confiscations, or even the NFA itself, I need you to do something extremely important. Hit the like button and subscribe right now. Not just because it helps the channel, but because on YouTube, if you don't engage, this kind of content simply disappears from the algorithm. Subscribing tells the platform that you want real information, not filtered narratives. So if you believe people deserve to know the truth, support this video with a like and a quick subscription. And I want you to comment below, what part of this decision shocks you the most so far? I'll be reading every comment. And whatever you do, don't leave this video early. The final revelation in this ruling, the part almost no mainstream outlet is talking about, will absolutely change the way you see the Supreme Court, the Second Amendment, and the future of personal rights in America. Watch this until the end, because the last 30 seconds may be the most important thing you hear all week. 1. The decision itself. What happened? In the first place, let's look closely at what this landmark ruling of the Supreme Court of the United States actually did: the case, the statute involved, the legal reasoning, and why this 9-0 unanimity is so striking. The case began when the government of Mexico filed a multi-billion-dollar lawsuit against U.S. firearms manufacturers, alleging that the company's products unlawfully flowed across the border and fueled cartel violence and gun trafficking into Mexico. The suit sought to hold the manufacturers liable for the harm done abroad. The plaintiffs argued that the business practices of the arms makers had substantially contributed to the violent crime crisis in Mexico, and thus they should answer in civil liability. This case hinged on the applicability of the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act, PLCAA, a federal law enacted in 2005 which broadly shields gun manufacturers and sellers from being held liable for crimes committed with their products. The key question: does PLCAA immunize the manufacturers from these claims, and does the statute allow suits seeking to hold them responsible for third-party criminal misuse of firearms? In its unanimous decision, the court ruled that the lawsuit must be dismissed under PLCAA. The justices held that allowing the suit to proceed would interfere with the statute's core purpose, shielding the industry from litigation when it cannot reasonably control how end users misuse firearms. This means the manufacturers were protected from being sued in this particular context. The court's opinion emphasized the legislative design of PLCAA to protect makers and sellers from liability for third-party criminal acts, provided that the manufacturer did not itself commit illegal business conduct, such as knowingly shipping guns in violation of law. It found that the plaintiff didn't plausibly allege the manufacturers knew about specific illegal trafficking schemes or knowingly assisted in them in a way that falls into PLCAA's exception for illegal business practice. What elevates this case from a routine dismissal is two interconnected factors. First, the unanimity. Every single justice, conservative, liberal, moderate, joined in the ruling. A 9-0 decision sends a very clear message. The court collectively agrees on the basics of the statute's scope and on the underlying logic of the immunity framework. When you have 9 votes, legal actors lower in the system, lower courts, litigants, states, pay attention. Second, the opinion goes further to touch on constitutional implications of arms ownership and regulation. While the case was ostensibly about liability, the court took care to note that certain types of firearms, commonly owned rifles, etc., are in common use, and that regulatory regimes must account for that commonality inside the constitutional framework of the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution. That latter acknowledgement is significant because it ties a manufacturer liability case into the broader narrative of firearm rights and regulation. To put it plainly, the court didn't merely rule on a niche business law question. It issued a definitive statement about how far federal immunity goes, and in doing so it reaffirmed, in strong terms, that broad ownership of firearms is not a fringe exception but lies at the core of what the Second Amendment protects under existing precedent. Lower courts and states will inevitably reference this decision when crafting or defending laws regulating firearm production, distribution, ownership, or conversely when challenging them. One more point. The decision came at a moment when gun rights litigation is accelerating. The court's unanimous voice gives this ruling added weight in future debates about carry rights, magazine bans, assault weapon bans, and state regulation of firearms manufacturing and sale. Legal practitioners will read this as a signal from the High Court: we agree on the fundamentals of statutory immunity and common use arms, now you build from here. In short, the Supreme Court delivered a sweeping 9-0 verdict dismissing the Mexican government's claim against U.S. gun manufacturers under the PLCAA, reinforced that immunity remains broad, and tied that question into broader Second Amendment language by acknowledging the common-use nature of certain firearms. This is the foundation for what the rest of this video will explore: how this decision ripples out to gun owners, industry, regulation, and politics. 2. What it means for gun owners and 2A rights. For millions of gun owners across America, this decision sends a strong signal. The Supreme Court is willing to back definitions of arms and ownership that favor broader rights, not narrower. The language that AR-15s are in common use effectively undercuts future bans that attempt to argue such arms are outside the scope of the Second Amendment's protections. Additionally, the unanimous nature of the decision makes it harder for lower courts to dismiss these arguments. When all 9 justices agree, it sets a high bar for states or municipalities hoping to restrict ownership, carry, or certain types of firearms. It raises questions such as, will large-capacity magazine bans survive? Will assault weapon bans survive? Will permit-to-carry regimes become harder to justify? Those questions are now more urgent. At the same time, because the case is not explicitly a Second Amendment ruling, it is about liability under PLCAA. There is still uncertainty, so gun owners and rights advocates must remain vigilant. They cannot assume unlimited freedom. Rather, this decision gives them new ammunition, pun intended, in legal and political fights. 3. Impact on state and local laws. This is where things get really interesting. Many state and local governments have enacted laws restricting assault weapons, high-capacity magazines, or even broad carry rights. With this ruling, litigators challenging those laws now have a new piece of precedent: affirmation that certain common firearms are protected and that the court is willing to speak in broad terms about ordinary citizens owning them. Lower courts such as the United States Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit have recently upheld sweeping bans on carry in sensitive places and on private property open to the public, in ways that many 2A advocates say run counter to the court's earlier framework. In New York State Rifle and Pistol Association v. Bruin, because of the unanimous ruling, states now face increased pressure to justify restrictions not just historically, but under a standard that recognizes broad possession as lawful. The history and tradition test from Bruin still applies, but now combined with language from the new ruling, plaintiffs can point to the fact that the Supreme Court views certain firearms as widely legal and used. That may tilt the balance in future challenges. 4. Manufacturers, liability, and industry implications. Although the headline coverage focuses on gun rights, one of the most immediate effects of this decision is for the firearms industry itself. By reinforcing the broad immunity under PLCAA, manufacturers and sellers will feel more secure against litigation that attempts to hold them responsible for criminal misuse of their products. From the industry's perspective, this is a major victory. It reduces legal risk and potentially lowers insurance costs or liability concerns. From a broader societal perspective, though, the indirect effect is that manufacturers may feel freer to design and market firearms without fear of being sued, which may raise concerns among gun control advocates about expansion of availability or newer types of weapon systems. Critically, though, the court's commentary about common use arms could limit future industry attempts to argue every firearm falls under the protective umbrella. If a new weapon system emerges that is not in common use, it might not enjoy the same protection. So in some sense the industry wins now, but also faces a potential new baseline for evaluation of novel arms. 5. Political and social fallout. What's the bigger picture? In the political realm, this unanimous ruling sends a clear message. The Supreme Court is aligning itself behind broad gun rights language, and states may begin to recalibrate. Gun rights groups are enthusiastic, gun control groups are alarmed. Lawmakers at state and federal levels will feel the pressure. Socially, the decision may galvanize both sides of the debate. Gun rights supporters will likely use it to push back on forthcoming legislation or regulation, Gun control advocates will intensify efforts to pass laws that can withstand scrutiny under this new precedent. We may see more aggressive efforts to amend state constitutions, more lobbying, more litigation. Furthermore, the decision could affect electoral politics. Gun rights have long been a potent issue in American elections, and this ruling gives one side the pro-2A side new talking points. Expect hearings, state proposals, and perhaps constitutional amendments to emerge in response. And from a national security/law enforcement perspective, there will be tiptoe negotiation. Officials will want to regulate crime and violence, firearms included, but the legal terrain is shifting under their feet. 6. What to watch next: upcoming cases, strategies, and hidden implications. Finally, what's coming down the pipeline and why you should stay alert. First, keep an eye on the upcoming case of United States versus Amani, docket 24 to 1234. The court granted certiorari to decide whether the federal ban on firearm possession by users of controlled substances, 18 U.S.C. Section 922, G.3, violates the Second Amendment. The Hemani case may force the court to address limitations on who may legally own firearms, not just what types of firearms. Second, even though the Supreme Court declined to hear two key gun rights cases concerning assault weapons bans and high-capacity magazines this year, 3 justices, Alito, Gorsuch, Thomas, dissented, signaling the court may very soon tackle heavy restrictions directly. With the backdrop of the 9-0 decision, those future cases could go dramatically in the 2A direction. Third, watch state-level litigation. States with strict bans may see lawsuits referencing the new precedent, and we may see injunctions or stays issued while those cases play out. The landscape could shift quickly. Fourth, the hidden implication: this decision may lead to a chain reaction of cases where plaintiffs challenge broad regulatory schemes, magazine limits, carry restrictions, storage mandates, etc., using the new legal momentum as leverage. Even rules that were previously thought safe may now be reconsidered. And finally, as gun manufacturers and rights groups gain confidence, we may see increased investment in firearms innovation, marketing, perhaps even direct challenges in Congress to regulatory powers, ATF rules, import-export controls, bans on ghost guns, etc. The intersection of industry, law, politics, and technology will become more congested and complex. To sum up, the 9-0 decision is a turning point. It strengthens the individual right to own common firearms, affirms protections for manufacturers, puts states on notice that old regulatory models may no longer fly, and sets the stage for a wave of litigation, legislation, and political action. If you own a firearm, care about individual rights, or simply follow how our laws evolve, this is something you cannot ignore. Now, I asked earlier, what surprised you most about this ruling so far? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'll definitely be reading them. And if you haven't already, please subscribe and like the video. Your support helps this channel deliver deep, meaningful analysis rather than superficial soundbites. Make sure you stay tuned for upcoming videos where we'll deep dive into the Hemani case, state-by-state impacts, and exactly how you can track these legal developments. Until then, thanks for watching, and stay alert, stay informed.